To the meeting of the Minnehaha County Commission. Will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reminder to everyone to silence their cell phones. Meeting documents are available for review down in the end next to Commissioner Heiberger. And Craig and Carol are here this morning if you need a listening device. That takes us to routine business. I'd consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item is the motion to approve the commission meeting minutes from July 23rd, 2019.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item are bills to be paid in the amount of $3,699,765.47.
Pay the bills.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any comments? Commissioner Barth.
Madam Chair, today's bills include $2.9 million towards capital projects, which of course is mainly the jail.
Thank you. Anything else? I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. There are a number of reports this morning that I would recommend for your review, and we have Jamie Gravitt here this morning to tell us about the new format for his juvenile detention center reports. Good morning.
Good morning. Jamie Gravitt, JDC. You may have noticed with our reports, they're a lot different this month. We've partnered with the University of South Dakota Medical School, and they're taking our data and providing the stats that you now see. If there's something in the new format that you are not seeing that you want to see, please let me know so that we can get it put in the monthly report for you, as well as the quarterly reports that you're seeing. The quarterly reports go a lot more in-depth into the data than the monthly reports, but you'll continue to get the monthly reports, the quarterly reports, and the yearly report in that format.
Any questions for Jamie? I thought the new reports look great.
Yes,
So,
they do.
Yeah, thank you.
They did a great job. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Bendiga.
I just have a comment. We've had a relationship with the city and JDC for as long as I can remember. This is the first time that I'm aware of. About a month ago, the mayor actually showed up at JDC and visited with the participants for quite a while. And the reaction from them and what I've heard since then as the liaison is extremely positive. So I wanted just to thank you for doing that. That's an outreach that we haven't seen in the past.
All right, so that takes us to personnel actions. I'd consider a motion to approve our routine personnel actions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 6, abatements. There are none. Item 7, notices and requests. There are none. Planning and zoning notices. There are none. Item 9, compromise for lien. There are none. So that takes us to opportunity for public comment. Now we have at least one person here. Good morning.
Good morning, Scott Wick with the WH Lion Fairgrounds Sioux Empire Fair. Thank you for your time this morning, and it's that time of year again. The fair kicks off on Friday the 2nd with a big concert with Keith Urban. So he's a double winner of Entertainer of the Year, and it's a big, big event for us. So we're going to kick off the 80th Annual Sioux Empire Fair with that concert. So we have a lot of things going on. We have a great lineup. We're right in the middle of the routing for Sturgis and WeFest, so we usually get the entertainers going back and forth. And on behalf of our staff, board of directors, we want to thank you for your continued support of the property. As you know, the Sioux Empire Fair is the second largest event in the state behind Sturgis. We run simultaneously, so big events on both ends of the state. The fair alone brings in about $15 million of economic impact to Sioux Falls, and the property overall is $35 million plus. So we want to thank you for your continued support, and also thank the mayor and Sioux Falls for the partnership that we have out there as well. We've done a few different things this year, and the ticketed show with Keith Urban is one of them. Something that's new in the livestock end of things for the exhibitors. with the suppressed ag economy, we were hearing a lot of things from families that weren't going to be coming to the fair, didn't have the money to show. If you have 2-3 kids and bring 12 animals, pay all the entry fees, it gets a little expensive. So we got together as a committee and our livestock supervisors, and what we're doing in our open class market shows is we have waived the entry fee, and we're still paying out for Grand and Reserve Champion and a few places down. And we've had a tremendous amount of phone calls. People are like, we've heard this, is it true? And this isn't anything that we want to do just when the economy's not so good for them. We want to become that niche fair, that boutique setting to where people are maybe not going to Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa with their animals, staying close to home because it's more affordable for them to show. So that's something that's very well received, and we think we're going to see increased livestock numbers with that. We also have a chamber mixer Thursday at 4:30, August 1st. That'll happen in the Nordstrom Johnson building. So there'll be food there and the raffle for a prize and everything as well. But as always, we're hoping for great weather. We've got a great lineup, new carnival, Crabtree Amusements. We've had good reports from the other events they've played up in North Dakota. Been in contact with other fair managers, Minot, State Fair, North Dakota, Grand Forks, and Fargo. So we're excited to have them come down. They have more rides. They're all much nicer and a different crew, so we're excited for that as well. So I'd entertain any questions. We have left some little trinkets and gift bags in the office for you guys for parking and admittance to the fair, so come on out and enjoy it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Questions for Scott? Commissioner Barth?
I plan to attend early and often. I'm sorry I don't have my fair cup here today, but I'll be wearing my fair shirt next Tuesday.
That's great.
And
You have a new fair mug in your gift bag.
let me ask, if you get there before 11, there's no entry, or is it before 10?
Great questions. Monday through Friday, we call it our lunch gate. Due to our great sponsorships, we can waive the entry fee till 1. We call it, like I said, the lunch gate. So it's free till 1 o'clock, Monday through Friday.
Great, that family of 8 can show up for,
That's right.
yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? It's an exciting time of the year. Thank you so much for coming. I'm curious, I have a lot of friends that are quite excited about the Keith Urban concert. Are there still tickets available?
There are a limited amount of tickets available yet, and typically, if this would have announced at the Denny, it would have been gone quickly. But due to the fact it's an outdoor show, people tend to hold back and look at the weather. But there was forecast rain. I didn't see the forecast this morning, but hopefully that pushes through and it becomes a nice August evening in Sioux Falls, and it's a bigger undertaking than probably 2.5 years worth of shows at the fairgrounds. It's a stage that's 5-6 times bigger, and the lighting and audio, it's a big deal. So we're very excited about that.
All right, good news for procrastinators out there. There's still a couple of tickets, so that's always good for me. All right, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Is there anyone else here for public comment this morning? Anybody for something that's not on the agenda? All right, so that takes us to item 10. No wonder this is why we have such a large crowd here, because we have Mayor Ten Haken here to give us an update on the One Sioux Falls framework. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. It's nice being on this side of the podium. See how you guys like it here. I'm going to fire some hard stuff at you. No, really the purpose of this morning was, to give you an update on some things that we're working on in the city right now. Give you a chance to ask some questions of me, but also would like to make this a standing offer. If it makes sense for me to get in front of you guys on a regular basis and update you on what's going on in the city, I want to do that. I want to make sure we remain a good partner with the county, which I feel that we are, but communication is always really key. So my goal with this was I reached out to Commissioner Bender and said, hey, if there's ever a time I could come and just update you on some of the things we're working on in the city, I'd welcome the chance to do that. So thanks for making time on the agenda. I seem like I talk about this ad nauseum, this graphic on the screen, but that's because this has served as the framework by which we're making all of our decisions within the city right now, including our budgeting decisions, including our policy decisions. And again, it's centered around really 4 core pillars around safety and health, accessible and affordable housing, our workforce development challenges or opportunities, depending on how you want to look at that, and then engaging people. I'll get into those real briefly, and I'll only take about 5 minutes here this morning. And then the two circles around the outside being innovation, foundational growth, meaning those pieces in the middle can't happen without foundational growth, meaning infrastructure, wastewater, storm sewer, the stuff we have to keep doing and not take our eye off those balls, as well as innovation. And thus we've started, it's about 8 months old now, a Department of Innovation and Technology in the city, which has been really transformational in the way we're approaching problems in the city. We're doing a lot more what we're calling cross-departmental innovation teams. So it used to be in the city of Sioux Falls, if we had a housing challenge, we'd put our affordable housing team on that challenge. Well, now if we have a housing challenge, we bring someone from PD and someone from HR, someone from finance, maybe someone from the streets department who has a heart for this topic, because no one department has kind of a monopoly on the good ideas on these issues. And that cross-departmental approach, what we call I-teams or innovation teams, has been very transformational. The very public one, a lot of people have seen and heard a lot about is transit, but we're also doing things in terms of a veterans home community. We have a personnel review process. Our personnel reviews, our employee performance reviews process probably hasn't been changed in about 2 decades. It's tired, it's old, it doesn't account for the way people work today. So we put together a cross-departmental team that's working on that. And then our internship program. We've had a very kind of shotgun internship program in the city, and interns are a great workforce development pipeline for the city of Sioux Falls. So, so those are some things that we've worked on with that kind of innovative cross-functional team approach. So we have each of our departments in the city that developed what we call BHAGs, or Big Hairy Audacious Goals. And I challenge them to develop anywhere from 3 to 5 BHAGs. And a BHAG to me is stuff that is pretty much unreachable. Okay, throw the buoy as far out as you can and then figure out how you're going to swim to it. And so each of these departments are executing to those, and I'm not going to go into all those, but a couple that I'll highlight. One related to housing, because it's one of our One Sioux Falls framework initiatives. We have a BHAG to have 1,000 new accessible housing units in inventory by 2022. So that's in addition to the existing inventory that we already have. It's a really big goal. We're doing some things with some land acquisition and other strategies to accomplish that. We're also trying to do that with as little of a budget increase as possible. So what we're doing with the city is looking at how we've been spending our housing dollars for the last decade and saying, okay, can we squeeze more juice out of this lemon if we pivot this program, or potentially axe a program that wasn't getting us a great ROI. And so we're also looking at partnering again with the county and some other entities on a housing clinic that we're in the early stage of assessing. Just like we have a physical clinic when you have physical ailments, we have a lot of people in our community who have housing ailments. And there's really not one throat to choke when it comes to housing. I mean, if you call the helpline center and you have a housing need and you know you're going to be homeless by the end of the week, they'll give you a great list of resources, but it's here you go, here's some places that can help you, and it's a very daunting place to start. So a housing clinic would help with that, so we're working on that. On the public safety corridor there of the One Sioux Falls framework, we're in some of the final innings of putting together a bond initiative that we're going to bring to our city council for a new public safety training center on the northeast part of the city, up by our wastewater treatment plant. We're having conversations with the National Guard about partnering with them for their their readiness training center and moving that out there. So we're having different conversations going on, and a lot of people are asking us, will this be a regional training center? So those in the county can use it, Baltic and Renner and Brandon and Volga and whoever. The answer to that is yes, it will be, but I will be very honest and transparent that the primary need, because we're funding it to the tune of about $30 million, is for Sioux Falls Fire Rescue and the Sioux Falls Police Department. So it doesn't mean we're not going to be good partners with the county on this and other facilities that want to use this, but we'll work them around the core need, which is for Sioux Falls Fire Rescue and our police department and potentially our National Guard. The triage center, I'm not going to talk a lot about that. Commissioner Karski and I actually have our first meeting this afternoon with the governor's office on our triage center. So I'll manage to get in touch with the governor, and they're sending her policy advisor on this issue to talk about that, to see if there's funding opportunities with the state for us to maybe take advantage of. And if nothing else, we just want to give them an overall kind of situational awareness of that facility and what we're doing and how we're partnering together on that. Monday at 3 o'clock, I'll present our city budget. Our city budget is going to not surprise anyone, and that it's going to be very, very heavily focused on that outer ring of foundational growth. A lot of infrastructure dollars. We have more dollars in our CIP that we've allocated, the highest percentage to public works than we've had in as far back as I asked finance to look. So we're putting a lot of money into the streets and the infrastructure of our community. And just because we're calling it a little bit of a catch-up budget, I think the next year or two, our budgets are going to be very heavily focused on that stuff. So it's not fun or exciting, but we have a $250 million wastewater plant expansion. We are breaking ground on a lift station next week, which, again, you guys know how important that is. 90% of our wastewater will flow through that lift station that we're breaking ground on. It's probably the most critical piece of infrastructure in the city. Not a lot of people show up to a groundbreaking for a wastewater station, but it's very, very important. And so you'll also hear there's been a little bit of discussion on our parks and it's trying to secure private sector funding for our park system. I will say that that's not a new concept by any means. I mean, if you look at our parks, Lean Park and McKenna Park, and actually our national park system was, you know, the Rockefellers played a huge part in giving land to our national park system. It's not a new concept to challenge the private sector to help us in our parks development. We have that with the Levitt, we have that with the Midco, we have that all over. Excel donates a lot of land to the city and has in the past years. What we're just doing is being more intentional about it and saying, all right, if the private sector does want to help with parks development, because that seems to be something they really do gravitate to, here are the main needs we have in our park system. Rather than just saying, will you help us with parks? We have some very specific needs. A handicap accessible park. We have a chairlift at Great Bear. That's very expensive that we're trying to see if the private sector is willing to help us with that and create some sponsorship opportunities with that. And continued land acquisition in the outer parts of the city for continued parks growth. So finally, talking about budget for next year, and you'll hear this if you come on Monday, we're going to be assuming a 4% sales tax growth for 2020. That's the projection that we're using. It's very rosy. I pinned my finance guys to the wall. I said, are you sure? And I tell you what, they gave me the historical look back, and they're always within about 0.1 or 0.2 percentage points of where they project. So that's what we're budgeting off. But as you know, the city, same thing the county does. If the numbers don't come in and the revenues don't come in, you pivot, you adjust, and you make cuts as needed. And also just watching very closely the fact that it's federal election year. Could be a change in the partisanship in the White House, which always makes people skittish on what's going to happen with the economy based on that. So we're just being very cautious with our spending and our budgeting on that too. So a lot more details will come out on that next Monday at 3 o'clock at Carnegie when we budget. So that's just a little bit of an update on some of the things that are going on in the city. Would love to entertain any questions you'd have for me.
Any questions for the mayor? Commissioner Barth.
Mr. Mayor, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it, and I know this isn't your first time here. Your predecessor was a bit of a lone ranger and never showed up. But you know, being on planning and zoning for the county, the growth of the city is actually one of our biggest problems because of, you know, you'll have an older neighborhood where nothing's happened for a long time, and suddenly someone wants to build a fast food thing there. And it's upsetting to people. So anyway, I just wanted to point out that growth is a difficult thing for us to handle. And I would also say that I appreciate your attention to water because clearly that's a big problem in our area with flooding, etc. And finally, let me say that as an advocate for higher taxes on alcohol, that could increase that 4% that you've suggested if the legislature would allow higher taxes. There are those, of course, that oppose it, and it's been a long time view of mine that the cost causer should pay a little bit more of what it costs. You know, alcohol is the original gateway drug, and they seem to be able to skate on paying their share. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Commissioner Heiberger.
I'm just going to add a comment. Thank you for coming. Appreciate that. And just to reiterate what the mayor said, that we do have a really good working relationship, and it's exciting to see some of the projects that are going forward. Our Sioux Empire Leadership Council with the city of Sioux Falls, surrounding communities, and business leaders in Sioux Falls, and just your ordinary citizens. And that will be hitting the fan here soon as we continue to work forward on that. But we've got a very good partnership with the city, and it's exciting to me too to see that you were visiting JDC. So
Yeah, thanks for your leadership on that, the Sioux Empire Leadership Council. One point, though, to Commissioner Barr's comment, people do look at the growth of Sioux Falls as an exciting thing, and most of those areas are a result of the challenges of growth. With safety, we have a meeting tonight at Kenny Anderson to address the gunshots that we're seeing on the east side of Sioux Falls and some of the challenges with it's juvenile gang activity, really. And that's why going to the JDC and talking to those kids that you can still catch them before it's too late is very, very important. And the growth, the sprawl we have, that's why working with your county planning folks and our city planning folks, we got to be lockstep because that growth has to happen together.
Commissioner Karski.
Two things. First of all, if you think growth is expensive, if you're not growing, you're shrinking. I mean, you're not staying the same. And if you think growth is expensive, try going backwards. The mayor, when he came on board with the city, he took a great interest in the triage. And we were at a point where we'd been working on it, maybe some weariness of the entire project over a number of years, and he really breathed life into it. And just to thank you for what you've done and bringing the involvement of the city, the facility, and just like I said, just breathing new life into the whole project. It's been fantastic, and it's helping to keep things moving. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much for coming. We do really appreciate partnerships, and I think it's the collaboration that we've had between the county and the city is a great thing for all of our constituents.
I
So.
would say, that just in closing, really, truly mean it in terms of an open invite. If you hear about an issue that seems to be talked a lot about in the city and say, you know what, our commission could use an update on what's going on with that project, please reach out to our office, and myself or Eric Beck, Chief of Staff, would love to come in front of you and update you on anything you need to hear about.
I think that offer goes both ways too.
Okay.
So we'd like to, if you think there's things that we could help inform the city about, we'd be happy to do that as well.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, so that takes us to item 11, which is a public hearing and second reading on zoning text amendment 19-03. David, good morning.
Good morning, Commission. David Heinold, County Planning Department. Zoning text amendment 19-03 is a property that's located at 48526 268th Street. It's actually, as you can see, it's right across the street from the Iowa state line. There's Grand Falls Casino to the south. The property, subject property, is outlined in red. It's about 8 acres property. The petitioner has submitted an amendment to change the Hoppy Plan Development District to number 9 for the list of permissive uses from single family to 2-family dwelling. This has gone before the Planning Commission last month, and is now Planning Commission is recommending unanimous approval of the zoning text amendment. I've included some of the documents from the minutes for your review. I've got some pictures that I want to go through of the site itself. The applicant has submitted a site plan of the building. The building is already there. There's some warehouse space. There's some additional indoor storage space for future tenants. And there's the residential off to the right there on the image. It's actually a 2-story building, as you'll see in some of the images here. This is the building itself. It's set back quite a ways from the property line itself. The property line is just in the foreground there. You can see the garages and this is an adjacent property, which is actually to the east of the subject property. Is an existing residential house there. And there's Grand Falls Casino off to the south. Here is the residential part of the applicant's request for a two-family dwelling, one on the bottom and one on the top. And there's the commercial space adjacent to that. And that's all the pictures that I have. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. Action should be taken to uphold, deny, or amend zoning text amendment 19-03.
Any questions for David? Commissioner Heiberger.
David, thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering, when we approved this in the beginning, it was just for one house, and now all of a sudden the plans have two in it, and we're asked to approve. And so, how did we get from there to here?
The applicant is requesting to have two-family dwelling inside this building. Originally, the request was just for a single-family dwelling. The property itself is 8 acres, so potentially they could have two houses there, since the minimum lot size is 4 acres for that property.
And it's a blind development. So.
Yes, it's planned development.
Other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. If the applicant is here and would like to speak, this is your opportunity. If you could just give us your name and your address, please.
Current address is Rock Rapids, Iowa, 304 South 5th Avenue. My name's Don Hoppy, and I'm the applicant. Originally, actually nothing has changed with the building design plan. It's a little bit my fault, misunderstanding. They asked as a single family. Yes, it's my son and daughter-in-law, but the way the building is designed, it qualifies as a two-family dwelling. So that's the only change. Everything is the same. So it's just my mistake on not realizing that the way the building was designed, it qualifies as two-family versus single-family.
Any questions?
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, thank you very much.
you.
If there's anyone opposed to this application, this is your opportunity to speak. Seeing no one opposed, I'd be open to
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to uphold the Planning Commission decision to allow an expansion of the Rowena suburbs.
motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So that takes us to item 12, which is a hearing on a denied abatement number 2019-53, parcel number 90846. Carol Muller. Good morning.
Good morning, Commission. Carol Muller, Commission Office. Yes, before you today is a abatement that was requested, and this is a bit unusual. You've had it before you another time, a little over a year ago. But in the situation that happened is the city of Garrettson approved the abatement. Minnehaha County denied the abatement underneath state statute. That means it comes back as a hearing. Both parties, Garrettson and the landowner, have both been noticed about that. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Lilla, Director of Equalization, who will take you through the facts.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commission. Chris Lilla, Director of Equalization. Yeah, we've heard this already. So the situation with this property is on November 1 of 2017 in Garrettson, Marlon Conrad owned 2.34 acres of land. On November 7th, so keep in mind, November 1 of 17 is my legal assessment date. That is the last day I can execute any changes by state law to any properties. So that sets the 18 assessment due and pay in 19 taxes. So on November 7th, Marlon had platted this 2.34 acres out into several parcels of land. One of which, a lot, he had already been in the process of building a spec home. Brant Ettheim purchased the completed home and a lot on December 4th of 2017. Again, November 1, I have to assess it as the property stands. It gets broken up into several pieces. A piece gets bought. A year later now, we get the tax bill. A request was made to my office in February to do a breakout of taxes for, because again, we sent out an assessment notice to the whole. It got taxed as a whole, but now it's all broke up when it comes due. So our office received a request to break out that tax. We executed that. The treasurer's office notified Mr. Ettram of his share of taxes due to that parent parcel being broke out. And he did not like that. He didn't think that he should be assessed. He didn't think he should be taxed. It all should be the previous owner. But the state law allows that to happen when ownership changes. Normally, those taxes, either prorated or credited, are handled at closing. We found out that there was basically no closing agency involved. So therefore, it comes back to me and the auditor and the treasurer's office to get that all figured out. Dealing with Mr. Ettram, he basically contacted me and wanted to know what he could do and how do we do this, and he wanted to appeal. Well, we're already past the appeal time, and it's really not an appeal. You can't appeal your taxes. You can only appeal your values. So my suggestion was his only course of action to be heard in any fashion was through an abatement process. One of the reasons being he has no taxable interest in the property. But he did. It was a different timeline, different verbiage. So that's what got us here. And I've told him right from the get-go I would not be able to recommend his abatement. He was very, very well informed of that, but he wanted to push it forward. So it came to you, and it went to the city of Garrettson. The city of Garrettson honored it or recommended it, and it came back to the county, which I recommended for denial. A second part of that abatement is also another fact that needs to be cleared up and taken care of is he wasn't asking for an abatement for all of the taxes. He said, well, if I can't get all of the taxes, then at least give me owner-occupied levy and charge me that. That is a whole another issue where he had to own the property on November 1st, occupy the property on November 1st, be his principal residence, and he can only claim one. He is in no way or shape or form qualifying for an owner-occupied, so it's the full tax burden. So it's a lot. The hang-up, had this property already been platted prior to November 1 and sold, he would have got the assessment notice, he would have got the tax bill in his name. The simple fact of this thing being platted after November 1, it takes a whole year for that to come onto the tax rolls to do that, and there's no way to change or edit that process or give him prior notice. I mean, that was some of his comments, is he wanted to have an assessment notice. And he also said, well, I have to have those out by March 1st. Well, yeah, and I did, to the other owner. And then he wanted the tax bill. Well, that went to the other owner. It's only when those taxes come due that then the state law allows us to do a breakout, when that has transferred or changed in the interim of that year. So there's nothing in my mind that could have been done or notified him in any way, shape, or form. We couldn't notify him until we knew the taxes were due. And then there's a request to break that apart. So, I mean, there's nothing allowable for us to circumvent this in my mind in any way. It happens. It's kind of a rarity, but it is what it is, I guess.
Commissioner Karski.
So, Chris, am I understanding that this type of thing is typically averted if a title company is involved because they would?
Yes, they would call us and say, okay, we know this is going to be broke out. Can you give me an estimate of what those taxes will be? And it would only be an estimate. I would use the previous year's levy, and I would break out that square footage or that structure value and give them and say, here's what the value is going to be, and then they will pull from somebody and set aside and hold on to that money, typically. So when they come due, it's at least close. It's already there. That didn't happen in this case, and I have no control over any of that. That's all between buyer, seller, and closing agency. Yeah. That did not happen. So,
Any other questions? I know we did go through a lot of these same facts not so long ago, and just as a state statute requires that we have this hearing here again today. So if the property owner is here, he may speak. I didn't see him, but there's a lot of people in here. Okay, so I would entertain a motion on this.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I want to ask if
Oh, okay. The city of Garrettson, I was told the city of Garrettson was not going to be here. Is there anyone here from the city of Garrettson? Thank you. Okay, so then we're back to a motion.
I'd make a motion to deny the abatement 2019-53 on parcel 90846.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So this is our day for public hearings. So the next item, item 13, is a public hearing to consider an application for retail on-off sale malt beverage in South Dakota farm wine license for the Isaac Walton League of America. Olivia.
Yes, the Isaac Walton League of America has submitted an application for an annual malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license. The application was sent to the Sheriff's Department, State's Attorney's Office, and Planning Department for review. I received no concerns or objections from any of those departments. And we do have a representative here if you have any questions for him.
If the applicant is here, you're welcome to speak. Good morning. If you just give your name and your address, please.
Yes, John Peterson, 917 North Savannah Drive in Sioux Falls. I'm the chairman of the board of the Isaac Walton League. And the reason for our request is that we rent our facility out to individuals on the weekends. That being, and oftentimes, about 42 weekends a year, the primary rental is for weddings. And we get requests, of course, as far as beer and wine. And that's the reason that we went ahead with our application.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? All right, thank you. If there's anyone opposed to this, this is your opportunity to speak. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved. I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Benega,
Aye.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. All right. So this takes us to item 14, which is why I think a lot of you are here today. We are going to receive a briefing only. There won't be any vote today. We're going to get this information about the proposal for 2 easements within the Minnehaha County property, the Prairie Nature Area, and it will be coming back for a vote in a couple more weeks, likely. But this is our opportunity to hear what the current proposal is for these easements, and Scott Anderson is going to take us through it. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Anderson, Planning Department. And today I'm going to be giving you the briefing on a project that has been in the works for many, many years. There really is 2 easements that we're going to be talking about. And I think it was very interesting following the mayor because he laid out the idea that there's partnerships that are involved. And certainly this is a very good example of a partnership where we are working with not only a bank, but there's also a private donor that is really stepping up to help advance the footprint of the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum and the Prairie Nature Area. So with that in mind, we have basically two easement requests, and let me go through those for you. So this, if you're not familiar with this, and for the benefit of the public, the Prairie Nature Area is located on East Sioux Falls on Highway 42, almost near the intersection of Highway 42 and 11, where it goes north to Brandon. Goes along the Big Sioux River, and it comprises approximately 23 acres of county property and 40 to 60 acres of city property. And together, we jointly administer between the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum Society, the City of Sioux Falls, and the county. We have a joint powers agreement, so we administer this all together. So I just wanted to explain that for the public. But there's also there's 2 easements that we're going to discuss today, and the proposal is for the easement 1, which is an existing roadway that has been there for at least 100 years. It was the roadbed of the prior Highway 42 in the early 1900s, and there's a bridge, an old bridge that crosses the Big Sioux River, and eventually this all leads down to that bridge. There is one existing residence that is located on that property, that uses that road. So this shows you the existing easement. This is basically on the east edge looking west down that easement. And this shows you on the top the roadbed. And these pictures were taken earlier in the spring. This is the existing residence. It's an old farmhouse that uses that easement. And then there's a second easement. And this second easement is approximately 290 feet long. And this is an easement that has been discussed for many, many years. And as a matter of fact, it was incorporated. The idea and the concept of this easement was actually included in our joint powers agreement, which was for the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum, for the Arboretum and the Perry Nature Area. This easement was identified as something that would be discussed at a later date when we adopted that joint powers agreement in 2008. So now fast forward 11 years later, and it's actually come to the point where the emergency access easement is needed to allow for future development of the property to the north of this, which is the Arbor's Edge development. And for just also for the public to understand what an emergency access easement is, this would be an easement which would allow for really only emergency vehicles to access it in a time where where the subdivision would be inaccessible from 10th Street, which now provides access to that. So in good planning, when you have good planning concepts, you always want two ways in and out of a subdivision in case there's a water main break or road improvements or something unforeseen that is happening. That emergency access easement could be opened up. It would be gated. That gate would allow it to be opened up, and then people could use that in times of emergency. So in exchange for the emergency access easement, the property owner is proposing to provide us, and let me show you the emergency access easement basically starts at the end of the existing roadway, and it runs straight west. And where that red gate is, basically it would follow and go straight west of that gate. On the right-hand side of the picture, you can see a small hill, and eventually the development will come down that hill, and there would be an emergency access easement, which I envision being a gravel road. It may be paved. That would depend on the city requirements. But there would be a gate, and then there potentially could be a nice walking trail, sidewalk that would lead into the Arboretum and the Perry Nature Area. So this shows, I'm standing, if you look way back there, I'm standing where the easement is. And right now, it's basically just grassland, so building an emergency access easement road would be easily doable because it's relatively flat. There would not be a lot of disturbance to the nature area. Once again, now this is looking sort of to the northwest, and you can see the property that would be developed into residential home sites and where our easement would sort of end, and then it would continue on into the development. In exchange for that emergency access easement, which is shown in the yellow, the property owner is proposing to, in exchange, give, in compensation for that easement, they would be giving us 3 lots, which is lots 16, 17, and 18. And this has always been on our radar to obtain these parcels of property. And actually, I had been working back in 2007 and was awarded a grant through Game Fish and Parks to purchase the 3 lots, 16, 17, and 18. And at sort of in the middle of that agreement, that grant, the property owner sold those lots with a lot of other property to a developer, and the deal, never came to fruition. So it has been in our plan to purchase these properties, expand the Arboretum and the Perry Nature Area, and they are what I would say are not they're not really ideal for any kind of commercial or residential development because of the curve of Highway 42, the grade of the property, and the geology. It really is very much all Sioux quartzite, and on the just west of Lot 16, there's an old mine, an old quarry. So the entire area is really underlying with quartzite and bedrock. So it would be very difficult to put in any kind of services there without blasting water and sewer into those sites. And then, as I said, the topography is limited, and the curve of the road is rather precarious. This shows you the entire Perry Nature Area and the concept of how this would really benefit the Perry Nature Area and the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum. And there are some benefits, and I've listed those for you. It would allow the future development of property to the north, which would be a great benefit both to the city and the county. We'd be acquiring land that we've targeted for many, many years to augment the existing park system out there. There would not really be any impacts to the private residences at this time. So I think as Commissioner or Chairman Bender had indicated, today is just a briefing memo, and there is an easement, and then there's a purchase agreement, and it's been circulated around for review, and by no means is that a final version of what may come to you in several weeks, but it is a very good under a introduction to where we are going. There may be some final minor tweaks to either the easement or the purchase agreement, but I'd be glad to answer any questions. And I know that there are several people from the Arboretum that are here, and there's people from the city, representing the city. And as I indicated, this is it's a wonderful cooperation of people and entities and groups of people to try and move this forward and allow for the expansion of the park and to provide the emergency access easement. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Commissioner Karski.
Clarify for me, Scott, because when I look at the map that you have up, that easement too, and I see all these lots platted out there. That was the original East Sioux Falls platting, is that correct?
That's correct.
We're not planning to build a bunch of houses out there.
So what you're seeing is the remnants of what was platted in the late 1800s, and that was the original town site of East Sioux Falls. And up until the 1960s and 70s, there were, people living there, and there was activity there. So when the Perry family, to give you a little bit of a history, and this actually occurred prior to my arrival at the county, but I think it was in 1999, 1998, the Perry family came to us. They had this property. It really wasn't that much usefulness in that property. However, according to our zoning ordinance, each one of those lots has a building eligibility. But we struck a deal, and we transferred that property over to what is that, the amendment that we just looked at, or the sorry, that was through the planning commission. There's a planned development on the east side of the river, the Perry development. And the building eligibilities were actually moved in 1990 over to what we now call Iverson Crossing. That's why you have all those, the availability of those houses there. In exchange for that, they donated all the property to the county, and that's a little bit of the history of that. And I know Commissioner Colby was here. He, I'm sure, worked through that at the time, but I'd be glad to answer any other questions.
Commissioner Heiberger.
The easement in yellow, who's going to be building that road and who's responsible for the maintenance of that road? Is that a highway issue or is?
No, it would be, the developer would be whoever purchases or ultimately ends up developing Arbor's Edge to the north. They would be required to build the road and maintain it.
Any other? Commissioner Benninga.
Scott, there's been some conversations that I've had on the phone about a bike trail. Could you tell me where that's planned to be?
Well, I think, let's see if there's a better map of where the bike trail would go.
And that slide right before project benefits, it
Yeah,
looks like
so
there
the
might be a,
second two.
yeah, second to the last slide.
All right.
Okay.
So this,
One
if
more.
you see, if you look at,
There you go.
Gotcha.
the bike trail, there's an old railroad bed, an old abandoned railroad which serviced East Sioux Falls and the quarry sites. That's would be the future extension of the Sioux Falls Bike Trail. And there are plans to when they reconstruct Highway 42, the city is working diligently with DOT to allow some kind of a structure underpass that would be constructed under Highway 42, which is also why it would be really beneficial to obtain one of those lots, or the lots 16, 17, and 18, because that underpass has been identified, the best location would be on one of those properties. And that would allow for a connection to the existing Arrowhead Parkway, or the Arrowhead Park, with this park. And then the railroad bed would serve as the bike trail. It would be a connection that would go east into Sioux Falls, or sorry, west into Sioux Falls.
And my follow-up question would be, when is a projected date for Highway 42 to be expanded?
I believe it's in, let's see, 2022, I think, so it'd be 4 years. 2022, 2023, and that's tentative. The DOT sometimes will push those back based on funding. So it is scheduled for that. It may be even a little bit later.
Commissioner Karski.
One other thing that comes to mind, Scott, is taxes, special assessments. How would all that be handled?
Well, in the agreement that the way it's currently written, the county would be obligated to pay for the special assessments and taxes that are due. And that would be approximately, well, let me look here. I think it's approximately $6,000 for all of the parcels. On lot 16, 17, and 18, it's a little less than $1,000. And then there's also a tract B and a D, which is up in Arbor's Edge, and that's a little bit more at about $4,200.
When you say the county would pay the taxes, that
We would be obligated to pay the taxes and any special assessments the way the easement and the purchase agreement is currently written.
okay. I've never heard of the county paying taxes before, so it's just an interesting way that you word that. Would you mean we'd have to make it the school district and the
Yes.
city hall? Is that what you're mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Scott this morning? Well, I know you and the city and all the folks involved have put a tremendous amount of time and energy into this, and I really appreciate you taking the time to present this morning. I think this was really helpful information, and it gives us kind of the information that we need to work with the parties to try to get a final deal crafted.
And thank you very much, and this is the introduction to, this is the first time that it's really come before the entire board, the county commission, and I'm sure that there will be more discussions ongoing. It is a complicated land transaction when you're dealing with several different parcels and entities, and we're working with the city of Sioux Falls and private donors. But I'm really hopeful, and I'm super encouraged that this is really going to come together, and it's really going to be a benefit to all the parties involved. The city would like it for their underpass that's going to connect up the parks and the bike trail. We're augmenting the park with some really beautifully wooded property, the Perry Nature area. So, and it will allow for the future development of that Arbor's Edge, which is really a benefit to the community, where we infill instead of continue to spread out. We're using some of our property that's already there to infill with some really beautiful homes. So I know there are people from the Arboretum here that they may want to speak as well. So
If I could, one more question.
Commissioner
Chair.
Karski. Mhm.
You know, I heard you made a comment that kind of raised my eyebrows, that there's an abandoned rail bed there, and I had a conversation last week with an individual who works for one of the railroads, and there was a development out in Brandon, I believe, that they built houses up close to what the people that bought homes said was an abandoned rail bed, and that the rail would never run there. Well, the railroad decided they need that abandoned rail bed back, and they're going to start running trains there. It upset a good number of people. Are we certain? I mean, what makes it abandoned? Have we checked with the railroad? Do they still own it?
Well,
a lot of questions come to mind on railroads and rail beds.
So with railroad abandonments, that you really get into some deep waters when you're talking about legal issues with abandonments with railroads, because it depends, and I'm not an attorney, so I have to be careful about, espousing law, but it depends on how the railroad was originally provided. There were land grants, and then there was eminent domain, and it depends on how the railroad was created, but in this property, it is certainly abandoned. The county already owns some of that abandoned railroad right away. We've used it for our park purposes. So I don't know if I can give you, I've never delved into
I'm just wondering, did the railroad turn over all ownership rights to that rail bed, or could they come back?
I don't know that, so.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Barth.
I think that those properties have changed hands a few times. I know that in Rowena and in, across the street from the east side Walmart, that stuff has been changed hands, and, I'm sure that Huhat is built right on that same railroad, along with the acreages going further west. So it's certainly built on out going east.
It's a good issue to bring up, and one of several issues that no doubt we will need to kind of vet through as we work towards a final transaction. So I know Scott was kind to point out the fact that there are a lot of folks here. This isn't really a public hearing, but if there was somebody from the Arboretum Board that wanted to get up and say something, I'd certainly grant some latitude there. You know how to reach all of us, so we are accessible if you have comments that you would like to bring to our attention. I know you guys have been involved in this issue as well. So, all right. So that takes us to the next item. Item 15 is we consider a motion to authorize the chairperson to sign a lease agreement between Minnehaha County and the South Dakota Department of Transportation. Craig Dewey.
Good morning, Craig Dewey, Commission Office. Before you is an agreement with the South Dakota Department of Transportation for use of some county-owned land around exit 402 for stockpile usage. Originally, the state of South Dakota had foreseen that this project would have already concluded. However, there were some delays, and so the project has been extended. And so this lease, while originally approved by the Commission back in 2013, earlier this spring, it was up for renewal before you. and you had approved that lease extension or renewal. There was some additional language that after the commission approved the agreement, the state needed to conduct some further legal review on. That is why you are seeing this agreement come up before you a second time, and the project is scheduled to conclude next year in 2020. The lease payments each month amount to approximately $100 that the county would receive, so we're not talking about a large dollar amount, but certainly would be available for any questions.
Questions for Craig? Commissioner Barth?
Have they been paying us that for 6 years, and now they figured out that they need more?
The lease originally expired at a certain point last year, and so when the commission, if you would choose to renew the lease here, the state would owe back payments to the point last year at which the lease expired, but up until the lease expired, the state was making regular payments.
There are other questions? Commissioner Heiberger?
Just a comment that I expressed to Craig yesterday is that there was not a red line copy, and so I'm not exactly, even though it's been approved by the state's attorney's office, so I know it's all okay, was not able to decipher what the little changes were, and that's a concern to me when I'm reading my agenda and I don't know what they are. So.
As a response to that, I was not involved in the specific negotiation of the terms, and since the state's attorney was the one who conducted the review, I would defer to Maggie Gillespie if you have any comments regarding changes that were made.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I can tell you that the terms of this lease, I understand, were negotiated by the Highway Department, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't negotiate the dollar amounts or anything. This did expire in April of 2018. It came to our office earlier this spring, I believe. And yes, it's been through multiple revisions. Since the approval that you made earlier this year, after you approved it, the state didn't like the indemnity provisions that we had added. And so since that time, the legal department at the DOT and I have worked through those indemnity provisions, the bulk of which, Commissioner Heiberger, you would find at paragraphs 11 and 12 are the provisions that talk about responsibilities for injury to property or damage to individuals. And we worked through those provisions, which we would generally do with the state on indemnity. And that's the language that we were able to come to agreement with. And then paragraphs 13 and 14 are the provisions where both parties represent that they've got adequate liability coverage in the event of a claim. It's my understanding that this was originally a 5-year lease from 2013 to 2018. I'm not certain what review that had from our office, but this came to our office, and those are the issues that the major issues that we worked through with the state. I do believe that the state had, a style and form change in the introductory paragraphs, but it was merely style and form as far as recitals of who the parties were. Thank you.
Other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion to allow the chair to sign this agreement.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So that takes us to item 16, which is consider a motion to appoint 2 applicants to the Minnehaha County Housing and Redevelopment Commission for 1 4-year term and 1 5-year term. Craig Dewey.
Good morning, Craig Dewey, Commission Office again. The Housing and Redevelopment Commission has been authorized by the Minnehaha County Board of Commissioners and oversees the physical structure that is Safe Home. Programming for Safe Home on an ongoing basis is managed by the Human Services Department. Jeff Yarborough is that program manager who offices at Safe Home, and Safe Home is a housing first model for individuals with the most severe form of alcoholism. This HRC has 5 members, including 4 members of the public, as well as 1 commissioner. That commissioner for the last couple years has been Commissioner Karski. And So these appointments generally are staggered so that no more than one person goes off of the HRC each year. However, we did have a member of the commission decide to step back and focus on some more retirement-related activities. And so before you, we have two different appointments. There is one 5-year term that needs to be appointed and one 4-year term that needs to be appointed. And the three individuals who applied are Nikki Gronley, Jeremy Roman, and John Thiessen. They were all informed last week that the commission would be taking up both of these appointments here today. I believe, looking around, it appears Nikki Gronley is the only individual who is present out of the applicants. The applicants were informed that they did not have to be present when these two appointments are being considered. I would also add, as one last note, Mr. Jeremy Roman specifically requested the 4-year appointment out of the two. And so, again, the action being requested here this morning is to make one 4-year appointment and one 5-year appointment for the Housing and Redevelopment Commission. Be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Oh, Commissioner Barth.
Craig, so was former Commissioner Dick Kelly the one that chose to leave, or did his term expire?
Mr. Kelly chose to leave. He would like to spend more time out on his farm and felt that pull. The individual who is decided not to re-up for a second term would be Mr. Steve Anderson, and he is also retired.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Barth.
I would just like to commend former Commissioner Dick Kelly for his service on this board. I know when he was first elected as a county commissioner, he was agnostic about the Safe Home project. And after touring it and visiting with the residents, he became a strong supporter. And he continued his efforts after leaving this body by staying on that board. And I sure do appreciate Dick and all he's done there.
Thank you. I know we appreciate all the folks that serve on those boards. These are long terms and require a lot of thought and energy. So we really appreciate folks that have served and that are willing to step forward and serve now.
So, Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
might, I'd like to nominate Nikki Gronley for the 5-year term, and what was the other fellow who wanted 4 years?
Jeremy Roman.
Jeremy Roman for the 4-year term.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to nominate Nikki Gronley for the 5-year term and Jeremy Roman for the 4-year term. We can do a roll call vote.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you so much for being willing to serve. All right, that takes us to item 17, is to consider a resolution to establish hourly rates for the Board of Mental Illness Chair and Assistant Chair. Carol Muller, good morning.
Good morning, Commission. Carol Muller, Commission Office. Before you today is a resolution that would authorize an hourly rate of $95 per hour for the chairs and assistant chairs of the Minnehaha County Board of Mental Illness. We are in the process right now where the presiding judge appoints the chairs, and that is in the process of changing. We're hoping that the presiding judge her goal is to bring them over in the next couple of weeks and introduce them to the commission. And it's the role of the county commission to set an hourly rate for the chairs and the assistant chairs who serve in that role. These are attorneys who do serve in that role. The one changeover I know that will be happening is that the attorneys will not, just as a courtesy the last very few years, we've been providing office space for them because we had office space at that time to use. These attorneys are already situated in their own offices, and we won't need to be providing that anymore. We won't do that as a courtesy providing anymore. So with that, would present the resolution to you today to authorize an hourly rate of $95 an hour.
Questions for Carol?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And that takes us to item 18, which is to consider a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2020 provisional budget for Minnehaha County. Carol?
Thank you. Counties in South Dakota are required to approve a provisional budget by July 30th of each fiscal year. And today is the day that you will be doing that. You spent many meetings in June talking about the budget, going over it, and even prior to that, you were meeting with department heads as the budgets were being built for your presentation and review. The total budget for fiscal year 20 stands at $92,118,340. This includes $64 million in general funds, $15 million in highway funds, $4.4 million in building funds, and $2.8 million in debt service fund. The provisional budget also includes $1.9 million of new opt-out tax dollars and $4,383,910 in cash applied. The provisional budget includes 20 additional positions, all of which are in the area of public safety. I would point out again the dollar amount that is in the general fund because that is the workhorse for us and the area where we receive the most challenges and where you all spent the most of your time.
Questions for Carol? I know we had an opportunity to visit about this a little bit last week at our meeting.
Make a motion to approve the proposed budget as our provisional, make a motion to approve the provisional budget as our budget.
Are you sure?
Easy for you to say. I will second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further comments? Roll call vote, please.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. That takes us to item 19, which are liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports? Commissioner Heiberger?
I have a couple of really short ones. So the Sioux Empire Leadership Council exec team met this past week, and we have assumed the responsibility of getting the work done behind the scenes to launch our first official meeting, which will be in mid-August. This past week, I also attended a JDAI Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative state meeting in Chamberlain, and we kind of dug into what the risk assessment instrument data is for our specific counties. And after digging into that, I'll be meeting now with our juvenile judge and staffing from that staffs on the juvenile side for to dig into some of the data. And then I met with Human Services this morning, and they have started meetings with Avera at the court's request to process the cases, and they said that that's going very well, and they're hoping by mid-August that they will have 75 of our outstanding medical bills completed. They said things were going very well. And then HS is also interviewing for 2 alliance positions. One is an open position from a retirement, and one of them is a grant-funded position, and they hope to have both of those filled by mid-September. They had a plethora of applicants for that position, so a lot of diverse stuff came in, so very good.
Fantastic. Commissioner Karski?
Last, was it Wednesday, Thursday? I lose track. Facilities Task Force had our first meeting. We kind of broke our task force up into 2 groups because we're touring different buildings. This one, the annex next door, emergency management, highway department. We're all toured. We had 4 members of the Facilities Task Force and the Auditor's Office and others involved in the project. Just kind of giving some eyes and ears, or basically it was kind of neat because able to look at what we have through the eyes of the members of the task force, the community, the people that we've asked to be involved, just to let them see what we have and why we want to do what we're doing. We're not asking for their approval of what we're doing, but basically to advise and consent to us on what are good ways of funding what we are considering doing. They by no means are the final approval, this body is, but for them to give us the what they deem to be the best financial approach to solve the problems of the county. These are all public meetings. Any of the commissioners are welcome. Commissioner Benega and I are kind of appointed to this task force. We'll be meeting again tomorrow with 3 other members of the task force for their tour of those same buildings. And then next week, Tuesday, August 7th, is that the right date? our Wednesday, August 7th, thank you. We'll be meeting at JDC because they also have facility needs, and kind of a quick tour of that facility, so again, they can see why we need to do what we're doing. And then we're really gonna get into the meat of, let's talk about the financial stuff and what capacity we have as a county and what our options are for financing, and to ask again for their input on how best to structure this type of financial project and getting it done. So anybody's welcome, and if you can make it, love to have you.
I was able to attend that tour as well. I thought it was very informative. I really appreciate the folks that have volunteered, the citizens that have volunteered to serve on that committee. They're very engaged, asked a lot of really good questions. I thought it was helpful for me to go just to listen to their questions, honestly. So I'd encourage the other commissioners, if you have a chance, to try to catch on to one of those tours. So any other liaison reports? Commissioner Barth? We got everybody today. All right.
Go ahead.
Well, it wasn't a liaison assignment, but I went to a neighborhood meeting with 4 city councilors here in Sioux Falls, of the folks that live over by and work over by the Bishop Dudley House, the Union Gospel, the banquet, concerned with the despicable behavior of some of the folks that meander around over there. And it's beyond what I can say publicly, the things that they've had to put up with. There was a lot of anger and certainly some uproar. Believe it or not, I chose not to speak. The fact is, though, that it was suggested, for example, one person was complaining about shoplifting and stuff in their store, where people would, open a package and just eat the stuff in it. And but then when it was suggested maybe to restrict alcohol sales, that same person said, we can't do that, because of course they're selling them the stuff. Anyway, it's certainly very concerning for people over in that area, and I'll let you know if I hear anything.
Mr. Bennigan?
Just a brief update on JDC. Fortunately, Jamie gives us information on a weekly basis about the population, and unfortunately, we're just about full. The shooting that happened a little over a week ago has increased our population significantly, which is disappointing, but that's part of why we have the facility. And I do appreciate the fact that the mayor was able to spend a little time talking to the participants, if you will, and clients, to help through that process and at least have some back and forth about the possibilities of different lifestyles. And I do appreciate Jamie's update on a regular basis.
Just to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, I think the Argus Leader honestly has done a really good job in the last week of covering some of the folks here at the county that are involved in public safety, and highlighting the fact that's something that I've really personally come to know, getting to know some of these leaders personally, that folks like Jamie and like Michelle Boyd and the new warden, they're folks that are not committed to just locking people up. They're committed to turning lives around and treating people that do come through the system with respect. And there's a lot of challenges, and it takes a great team, and I think we do have a good team that are up for the challenge. And so I wanted to appreciate the Argus Leader for the good work they do, and our staff for really the good work. We have a lot of very caring, compassionate people that work throughout the system, but even through the law enforcement system, that I think sometimes gets overlooked. So, Commissioner Bennigan?
Now that you say that, besides the accolades for the Argus, I just want to say that a few comments that I'd received about the provisional budget that we just adopted, most of it was trying to understand from the taxpayer standpoint why we had to do that. And I'd say after you've had the conversation and talk about public safety related issues and the growth and the concern and the revenue sources and all that kind of stuff, most of those conversations were very accepting of the fact that we needed to do that. And frankly, I only had one negative comment about that whole process that I would say was substantial. So
Yeah, and I know we have tried multiple avenues to try to help educate folks on some of our budget issues, but we can always do better in getting that word out to folks. So, Commissioner Heiberger.
I'm actually going to piggyback on that and plug the CityLink story, if you want to call it that, that Craig from our staff and Commissioner Bender and Commissioner Karski did a couple weeks ago. I was able to watch it yesterday as I was doing some of my other county stuff. It was excellent. It's on YouTube. That's where I get it because I don't have CityLink. So if you don't have CityLink, you can find it on YouTube. And I believe it's also on our website. And so you could find it. It was well worth listening to. It's 30 minutes. There was also some amazing commercials from the Highway Department that I thought were very well put together. So if you haven't had time to watch it, just take 30 minutes. It's definitely worth your time. It's very informational.
Thank you. All right. That takes us to item 20, new business. Is there any new business? 21, old business. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to recess.
Motion to recess.
Second.
And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll recess until about 10:30. Thank you.